Alright, so I'm just going to ask questions. And
Ask me no questions and I'll tell you no lies.
that's right.
Is that light too bright or?
No, I think it's...
He's positioned it all.
I think it's perfect. If I'm using my phone, I'm listening. I'm just writing questions that I think of. So really, the point of it is just to get y'all's life story. And you could go into as much detail as you want. But for the next generations, you know, to get to know you, you know, my kids and their kids and their kids and their kids. So, beginning, where were each of you born, and when?
Well, since he was born first.
Okay.
I was born about 2 miles north of where I was raised, north of Tampa.
Okay.
On the McCard place?
On the McCord place.
Okay. And the McCord place, they still own it, right?
The estate does.
The estate, okay. Okay.
And how much detail do you want?
As much as you can.
Well, I lived there in the McCord place till I was about 5 or maybe 6.
Okay.
And we moved to the what's called the home place there. Of course, there was an old house that we tore down in 1947.
Okay.
And I was raised there and went to school at Talpa 12 years, and then went to Howard Payne, and then
You finished at Howard Payne?
graduated from
And you
there.
got a degree in what?
Secondary education, business administration, and accounting.
Okay.
And I worked at the funeral home part-time as well as some other part-time jobs while I was in college.
Okay.
He graduated from the college, Howard Payne College,
Okay.
on Saturday, and we got married the following Tuesday. Why we married on the middle of the week, I don't know. Maybe that's the only time we could get to church.
Yeah.
The day before I was 18.
Okay. Okay. The day before you were 18. Okay.
Yeah, and it had been a drought, no rain, and the day that we got married, it broke. And
Really?
There was rain all
It just
day
poured?
long. And somebody said, "Oh, how do you feel about the rain?" I said, "It's a great omen to me."
Yeah.
And so we had, it broke the drought.
And where'd you get married?
Talpa, Texas,
In
Emmanuel
Talpa?
Baptist Church. Was it Emmanuel?
Emmanuel
Emmanuel
Baptist.
Baptist Church.
Is that church still there?
Their church is still there.
Okay.
And Joe's roommate from college, Billy McClellan, married us.
Okay. Okay.
And they were roommates in college, in fact.
Okay.
And so that's it.
No, you're Hatchet.
I'm Hatchet. Well, my mother had a little girl, and then she had a little boy 3 years later.
Okay.
About Joe's age.
Okay.
And he died at 9 months.
Okay.
And then she got pregnant again, and the doctors did not want her to have me and wanted her to abort the baby. They said, "We will not take your case if you don't abort this baby." And she cried, and so she had a friend that's daddy was a doctor, and so she talked to her daddy and said, "Will you please have Fonsil?" He told her the same thing. Of course, she cried again. So he said, "Do you know of a doctor anywhere that you have a lot of confidence in?" And she said, "Well, yes, Dr. Seeley in Santa Ana, Texas is real popular, and I've heard a lot of good things about him." So he said, "Would Joe make a bed in the back of the car and take her?" So we did. And the doctor told her the same thing. And then she cried again. So he said, "Well, I'll tell you what. If you will do exactly what I tell you to do, we'll try to have this baby."
Okay.
So he gave her a lot of vitamins to take and sent her back. I was born in Royalty, near Monahans,
Okay.
Ward County. And so she had me. And then when I was about a year old, she nearly lost her life. But Dad worked for an oil company, so we moved around a lot.
Okay.
And
All in West Texas.
No.
Okay.
No. We lived in Shiro, Texas, near Huntsville, between Huntsville and Navasota.
Okay.
We lived in California a year. We went, the Royalty was a boom town, and there was a lot of meanness and wildness going on there, and Daddy said, I can't raise my family here.
Okay.
So he quit the Atlantic and went to California, and he worked there a year, I think, in the steel mill, was it? Or welding, or I think he welded.
Okay.
And so I got the progression of years, something I got with Mother on before she died. I've got it in there somewhere in our stuff. But anyway, he kept calling back to Atlantic Pipeline and saying, and they would hire him again, but they had to have a place for him to go. So finally, and they'd say, no. And finally they said, yeah, we have a place to send you. I think it was Andrews they sent us back to. So anyway, so they'd reached his time, he went back to work for them, and he retired they became Atlantic Arco, I think was what
Atlantic Richfield.
Atlantic Richfield.
Okay.
Arco. So anyway, he retired from them. But, so we moved back to Andrews, and we lived in Andrews, we lived in Shiro, we lived in, Talpa, Zephyr, California a year, and even in Las Vegas, Nevada for a few months.
Okay.
And anyway, Talpa was home.
Okay.
That's what I consider home. I went to school there. Oh, and we lived in Garden City 3 years.
Okay.
And I went to school in Garden City, went to church in Fort Senate, bought groceries in Big Spring. That's where I learned to drive at 11 years old. And but Talpa was always, and I lived in Seminole. I went to school 4 months in Seminole, my junior year of high school.
Okay.
And I knew Joe. When's the first time you knew of Shirley Allcorn?
You was about the 3rd grade and just prissing around with those pigtails, you know.
So how did y'all meet?
Well, we knew of each other then.
Okay.
Of course, there was 3 years between us, and I ran with the kids a year younger and a year older than me, and she did the same thing. So we just didn't run in the same circles.
Okay.
I knew his brother far better than I knew him, really.
So did y'all meet in high school?
Well, like you said, when I was in the 3rd grade, we moved to Talpa, and he was my first recollection of him, and I don't really remember him back then, but he remembers me. I went the 3rd, 4th, and part of the 5th grade there, and we would go into his room for, was it math?
It was reading or something.
Some course.
Some class.
And so we'd have one teacher over 3 grades, and then he was in another room with older class, and so one period during the day, they would march us into their room, and we'd have a class there. Okay. And that's where he remembers me from.
Okay.
And so then we moved away, and then came back my freshman year.
Okay.
He was a senior in high school, and he had a girlfriend, and he was engaged to this girlfriend.
What?
So
I never knew that.
Yeah.
What happened there?
He had given her a ring.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. They broke up, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know why. It wasn't because of me.
Uh-huh.
And so, anyway, and in fact, we even double dated one time. I had a boyfriend, and he had a girlfriend, but one time we double dated. He went with Tommy Joe West and
Tommy Jean.
Tommy Jean. And I went with Wendell Franklin. And I had a nosebleed. And so, the only time I've ever had a nosebleed on a date, but I did. And so, that's the only time we almost dated, but didn't, there's no talk of that. So then he went off to college. His senior year was my freshman year.
Okay.
And so then my senior year, Daddy said he took another friend and me and dropped us off at Howard County College to look it over.
Okay.
And so when we walked in, Joe had on his big, they had some kind of, what was it, centennial?
Centennial celebration.
Was it 50th or 100th?
I don't remember.
Anyway, he had his mustache, he had his big top, they were all dressed for vacation, and he was ushering.
Okay.
And so we walked in, and Lyndon B. Johnson was speaking that day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I walked in.
That was before he became president.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I don't think he was maybe even senator at the time.
Okay. Okay.
But anyway, Joe said, "Good land, Shirley Rowe, what are you doing here?" And then he invited us to go see that they were going to have a parade. He said, "Would you like to go look at the town and go to the parade with us?" And so we said, well, sure. So we went to the car, and Aline Ham and I were trying to decide who's going to get the front seat, because, you know, who was going to get the back. Well, then we looked up, and he saw a girl he'd been going with standing on the front of the college, and you can tell him about that.
Yeah.
Well, she had planned to do something, I don't remember what. Anyway, I knew she had plans, so I thought, safe, I'll invite her to, you know, keep peace in the family.
Sure.
Damned if she didn't go with us.
She broke her plans and went with us, so we didn't have to worry about who sat in front seat. So he took us, and he was so nervous. He told the same joke 3 times and didn't even know it. And he took us.
That sounds familiar.
He took us to the parade, and drove us around town and showed us everything. Then the next thing I knew, now I knew his brother Boy. He was like a year and a half younger than me.
Okay.
And in school, and we cut up together and kidded a lot, and we were voted most typical of my senior year of high school. And so anyway, he called first before you passed off a note. Anyway, Joe used to send notes by his brother to me.
Okay.
And then he called one day, and I had a friend that I went to school with in Seminole, and she was in college. She was older than me, and she was engaged to a guy that Joe knew. So he wanted them to come he was working. So we sent them down in his car to get me to spend the weekend at Howard Payne with my girlfriend and us double date. They were engaged. So we did. They came and got me. And we went on a picnic out at the Roundwood Lake the first night. Second night was a rodeo. So it was rodeo. And so just he and I went. Well, I sat up in the stands, and he got a call. He worked for the funeral home, so he got a call, and I sat up in the stands and watched the rodeo by myself, on my bicycle. So anyway, we had a very short dating period, like 3 months, and we were 2 months, and we were unofficially engaged. 3 months we were engaged.
Wow.
And 5 months we were married.
Okay, so all right, dating, when you say that you went on a date, you know, when y'all were in high school?
I'd come up to Talpa and get her, and we'd go out and visit with Mother and Dad.
Okay, that was a date.
We'd go back home.
That was
okay.
a date. We didn't do a lot of dating.
Okay.
Once, not too long, I was going to take her home, and Dad said, just leave her here. Said, I'll take her home after a while.
That was his daddy's approval.
Okay. I like that.
Mr. Allcorn he had Parkinson's disease.
Okay.
And he had very little to say, but what he said was effective. And he was always very sweet man to me.
Okay.
He was very sweet. Now, his mother was a different story. You have to understand the previous history. They had a little boy,
okay.
Leon. I can't remember his, Curtis. Leon Curtis. And when he was 2 years old, he had that bad dysentery that children have, and he died. And then 5 years later, and they were a little older when they married, kind of like kids of nowadays. And
That's about your age?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the late 20s?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they had a little girl that was born dead.
Okay.
Ms. Allcorn had the same thing your mother had, preeclampsia or whatever, high blood pressure, and so anyway, the doctor told her, said, Willie, we're going to find you dead out in the pasture if you don't stop running and doing and, be still. But anyway, so then, 10 years later or what, Joe was born. So he was their oldest child.
Okay.
And you can imagine how big, if you'd had 2 children gone, and then you had a son that was your oldest child, well, he was special, and I probably wasn't special enough for him. But anyway, we made it. And then 5 years later, his brother Flora was born.
Okay.
So she was 40 when she had him.
Okay.
And then 45 when she had Flora. So anyway, where were we going with that?
So,
When we
Our
married,
dating. Yeah.
Daddy tried to get her to go to college. In fact, he offered to pay for it if she'd go. She didn't go.
He said, Shirley, I will pay for you to go to college if you'll go. And Ms. Allcorn liked to swallow her teeth. And I can understand that. They were, how old were they when we married? 56. How old would that make them? We married in 1956.
56, okay.
Anyway, you know, they were old enough to be my parents.
Oh, okay.
If they'd married yet.
Okay.
Because my parents married yet.
Okay.
But they didn't. So
I want to ask you about your parents in a second, but
okay.
Just backing up, do y'all remember your first memory? Do you have a first memory?
My first memory?
I guess probably my first memory was when her class would come in to my classroom for reading or something like that.
Period.
Just in general.
Yeah, I just remember.
No, you remember it before that. He wants to know your first memory, period. When Joe knew there was life, and what did you remember?
Oh.
Yeah, so the first memory of your lifetime.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know.
That's a tough question.
Well, and my first memory, we lived at Zephyr, and I was probably 2, maybe, and or younger, or somewhere in there, whenever we lived at Zephyr, and we rented one side of a woman's house that lived out in the country, and I remember going in her kitchen and her having false teeth. I remember looking for Santa Claus to come down the fireplace. I remember some things and some unpleasant things I don't want to talk about. Then Daddy came, and I took a bath in a round wash tub in the living room.
We didn't have bathtubs then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
Did you have electricity?
Yeah.
Did you have?
I think we did.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
Running water?
Yeah, I guess we
Okay.
did. I don't remember that.
Okay.
We got running water when we moved down to that home place. It's about 39 or 40.
Okay.
And Dad put in running water.
Okay.
Not hot water, but it's
Just
running
water.
And then we didn't get electricity till about 1948 when when we built the house there. We built it in 47.
Okay.
And Arnold wired the house, and we went ahead and wired it for electricity because we knew we were going to eventually get electricity out there.
Anyway, I remember Daddy coming to the door, and Mother kept trying to hide what he had in his arms. And he had a puppy. And it was, a guy had this little puppy, and it stopped at the filling station and to put gas in the car, and he left it. Forgot him. I guess the dog got out or whatever. Anyway, Daddy picked up the dog and brought it to the house. And Mother was trying to hide it from me. She didn't want me to see it. And I said, "Oh, Daddy." And Daddy didn't believe in, well, I'll tell this later. He didn't believe in buying dogs.
Okay.
Paying for them. Anyway, I said, "Oh, Daddy, did you bring that sweet thing with me?" They tell me this. I remember the dog. I don't remember what was said, but that's what my mother said.
Cricket, was that his name?
And we named him Cricket, and that was my companion while I was 8 years old until he disappeared. And
What do you think happened to him?
I think the guy who owned a bunch of dogs across the street attacked him. Probably.
Okay.
And so anyway, we never did know what happened to him. But Mother wouldn't let him sleep in the house. And when it was cold, because he wanted to get on the couch, and she wouldn't let him do that. But she said, "Oh, Cricket, if you come back, I would let you sleep on the couch, and I let you sleep in front of the fireplace." So anyway, wherever I was, that dog was, and you could just say sickle, and that dog would attack anything that's around me. And even my dad, when we lived in Shiro, he was going to spank me for some reason, and had the dog attacked him. He was jumped on the bed and grabbed a hold of him. And so Daddy had to lock him out of the house in order to give me a spanking. So, and they weren't spankings, they were whippings.
Yeah.
I didn't have many, maybe 2, and that was enough.
Okay.
That was enough. But Anyway, that's some of my first, and I remember feeding the geese a whole loaf of bread, and my mother cried because, you know, I wanted to feed the geese. Well, I fed them the whole loaf of bread, and they ate it all. But that's
bread was expensive.
Yeah, I bet.
That was
20 cents a loaf.
Yeah. And then one of my next memories, and then I'll shut up. I live next door, and I bring this in because this little girl's coming back into our lives again. Patsy Sykes. We rented a house next door to her in Talbot, Texas. Her daddy owned the grocery store. And we were little girls in diapers running around the house playing. She had older sisters and a brother. And I had an older sister, of course. And so we played together. And then when we moved to California, we rode the bus and left. Daddy was already there, I guess. And it was before our birthday. And our mother gave me a tea party set and hugged me and cried. Then years later, we moved back, and I was 8, and then we went to school together, graduated together, sang together at the church with some other girls, friends of ours, close friends of ours. Sang together for the school and the church and other places around Lions Club and all that. And they're going to move here, where we're living now.
Oh, wow.
And so we're going to spend our twilight years in the same area.
He was talking about...
And she's one day younger than me.
When you first met Patsy, her daddy worked for the Red and White grocery store.
Oh, really?
Which was across the street.
I don't remember that.
Ralph Eaton's on it. And Sykes was the butcher.
Okay.
And then later, and I don't know when, Patsy would probably know, Sykes bought out Brian Richardson and his wife Maud, that owned the grocery store across the street.
Okay.
And then it was their store, Sykes Grocery. And of course, through growing up and everything, well...
Oh, and another comment about Joe. When we were in high school, he was a senior, and I was a freshman, so we saw each other on all occasions. He talked fast.
Really?
And I didn't understand him because he talked so fast. And I would have to ask him what he said, so I avoided it because I was too embarrassed to ask him what he said. I'd have to ask him again and again.
That's funny.
So
what was how big was Talpa at that time?
Talpa was roughly 100 students, 12 grades.
Okay.
What about the town?
What?
What about the town? What size town?
Well, Talpa was 1,000 people, maybe.
Okay.
One time they had a bank.
At that time, it had a bank, which closed when during the Depression.
Okay.
Had several filling stations, 6 or 7, and a couple of grocery stores, lumber yard, and
okay. So it was a decent town.
Yeah.
At one point.
Yeah, it was.
It was a small town, but it was a good town to be
It was
raised
pretty good
in.
size, pretty prosperous, so to say, town till about the 50s.
Okay.
Now, we married in 56, so give or take in that period there.
Okay.
Because I know when we married, there was 4 churches in Talpa. There was the First Baptist, which was the VMA Baptist, then the Emmanuel Baptist, which was where we married, and then there was Presbyterian, and then the Methodist Church.
Okay.
And the Methodist Church was catty-cornered across from where Shirley grew up.
Okay.
I lived between a busy highway and a railroad track. And I used to go out there and wave at the conductors as they went by on the train and they'd throw me money, coins.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I didn't get rich. But
So,
I got a few.
was it mostly white, or was it white and then Mexican?
We had one Spanish guy, was neighbors of ours, worked for the Herrings there, Ascension Soto. I see him every once in a while. He lives in Ballinger.
Okay.
And Ascension was he goes by John now, but since you know what I knew him as, he's probably a year, maybe 2 years ahead of me.
Okay. And black? Was there any black?
No black.
No,
black.
when I lived in Shiro, we were there 3 years.
Okay.
There were blacks. And the town, there were a lot of them, but they were mistreated. There was a little bank in that town.
Okay.
And in fact, my little girlfriend, her grandfather owned the bank. And we played together. And one day, it was time, we heard my mother saying it was time to go home, and she didn't want me to go home. So we decided to hide.
Okay.
And we hid in the brush next to the house. And of course, they should have known my little dog was right there, wherever we were. But they couldn't find us, and they looked, and the whole town had the whole town search for us. They were afraid that somebody had kidnapped us and were going to hold us for money from her grandfather. And anyway, when I heard my daddy's voice, because he was working, I knew we were in trouble.
Oh yeah.
And so I said, well, we need to go out. Well, I intended to play like that. We didn't know they were looking for us. But she jumped out and said, ha, 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 I guess we fooled you.
Oh.
And so that didn't set too well, and that was probably my second whipping I got with a belt. And we had these friends, and they wanted to take us home with them, anything to keep Daddy from whipping me, but it didn't work.
Well, so what was your
But
dad?
there were a lot of blacks there. They were mistreated, and we were taught by my mother to be nice to those people. They did her washing for us. She was not able to use the rub board. We didn't have washing machine. During the war, they had new stuff, and when we moved to California, they sold everything. Piano, sewing machine, cook stove, everything.
Okay.
And so when they came back, you couldn't buy that stuff.
Okay.
So we had to cook on, put wood in a stove to cook. And then she had a rub board to wash clothes. Well, she held not real strong. She was not strong enough to do that, so she hired black people to do that. But we were taught to respect them. And they would say, well, your girls are nice to us. When they see us in town, they speak to us, but kids here do not do that. They were real subdued, and they'd sell them something, and then they'd make them pay for it again, and treated them awful.
Okay.
Awful. It was East Texas, so.
Did they have jobs? Did they work?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Over and over and over.
But people would hire them, though?
Yeah.
For labor? Okay.
They did.
Okay.
But I always had a love for the underprivileged because of my mother, I'm sure. She taught us to care and to be nice about people.
Okay.
That's the only time I ever went to school with blacks. So.
Was it segregated? Did the blacks and the whites go to school together?
Well, the best I remember, there were 3 little black kids in my I went first grade there and second grade.
Okay.
And there were 3 blacks in my first grade, but I don't remember anything else about it. We used to all have to gather together and gather wood, and our fathers got mad because their little girls should not have to carry wood and their little boy at first grade. So they would go down there and carry wood in the forest. But and then we played that. That's where I learned to play baseball, because we all had to do something. It was like first through probably 6th grade or 7th grade. Okay. And we'd just do things. Everybody had to do things together. We'd play baseball, and then we'd build little log frames and play house. And very primitive. Used to fish for crawfish.
Oh yeah.
And we'd put bacon on a nail and drop it in the water.
And it worked?
Yeah, it did.
Do you remember your first grade teacher? Do you?
I do. Miss Gracie Ray.
Tell us about her.
She was, I remember the first grade. Now, of the kids I graduated from high school, there was about 20 in our graduating class.
Okay.
There was 4 in the class ahead of us, and 4 in the class behind us.
Okay.
But ours was a big class.
Oh, it was a big class?
Yeah. And like I say, the whole type of school was about 100 people, 100 kids.
Okay. Small.
Of course, they came from different,
I had 9 in
that
the
area.
class. 3 boys. 6 girls.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
you
6
had how
women.
many? How many?
9.
9?
What did y'all do for fun? What'd you do for fun?
What'd you do for fun? You did a lot of things.
I guess what I'm getting at is, I'm imagining that it wasn't like now where when you're in high school, the kids go out and drink and
Well, the closest beer was the county line, which is between here and Miles.
Okay.
And so there was no beer
Okay.
in Ballinger or anywhere. And nobody had any money to buy cigarettes, so we smoked cedar bark.
Really?
Yeah. And
Well, my only smoking experience was toilet paper
Well,
one time, and in 5 seconds it was gone. So that's
that is.
I recall smoking. But what did we do for fun?
Yeah.
We went on dates. They did a lot of things. They get out in the country. You fixed up cars and some of the things you did. And I went to school, went to church, had tea parties with my dog Cricket till I was 8. And then us girls in high school, we went to drive-in theaters, and we'd go every Sunday. During the summer we'd swim, and then we'd go to a movie. Several of us girls would get together, and we'd go to the picture show. After church, we would go to church first,
Okay.
then we'd have to go back home and go to church again.
So what would you say from that time period that time period versus today? What are some of the biggest differences in terms of?
Well, there wasn't TV in our home till my junior year of high school, and I could not watch television until all my
and nobody
homework
had a
was
car.
done.
Kids having a car was just unheard of.
Okay.
No. Now, Foy, your brother had a car, but we did not. Well, no, you did. You had a car. You drove.
Well, that old 37 Ford.
Well, that's okay. I didn't have a 37 Ford.
So life moved a lot slower back then. You had to entertain yourself.
Oh, yeah.
You had to be creative.
We didn't have TV, and we had a wind radio that played from the wind charger. We had a wind charger, and we would charge the batteries up on Saturday so we could hear the Grand Ole Opry.
Who were some of the artists that you look forward to?
Eddie Arnold, Roy Acuff, and Ernest Tubb.
Was this before Hank Williams or?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay.
This would have been late 40s.
Okay. Did you ever see Hank Williams perform?
I did. He was just coming out.
Okay.
And a girl I was dating, her mother wanted to go see Hank Williams. And 2 or 3 neighbor ladies wanted to go. Well, their husband wouldn't take them. So they conned Levita and I,
His girlfriend.
Okay.
to go down to Brownwood to see Hank Williams.
Okay.
And he was just coming out with the Lovesick Blues. Back in one of the first times he had sang it, you know.
Okay.
And Horace Logan was the MC on the Louisiana Hayride.
Oh, so it was the Louisiana Hayride?
Louisiana
Okay.
Hayride,
Okay. I bet that was fun.
Yeah, well, we were glad the opportunity to go, you know.
Sure. Did y'all work when you were in high school?
No, there wasn't anything to do
Okay.
in Talpa except to
Play the piano.
clean house. I didn't like clean house.
For fun.
There weren't that many houses that they could pay for you to do that. Did you work? You worked.
Well, I had a
Well,
job. Roy
Or you
Smith
did.
had a service station there in Talpa.
Okay.
And we got caught up with the farm work there, and I was wanting to get some money. Well, of course, what can the kid do? That's about all they do.
Sure.
So I went in there and told him I was looking for work, and I thought maybe he'd hire me to pump gas. And he said, well, I need somebody to plow my feed, milo, maize. And it was a couple of days' job. And he had an old steel wheel tractor. And if you ever rode one of those, that the wheels throw dirt on there. And you just throw it up there. You sitting up there in the seat of the tractor, that thing throwing dirt and everything.
Hit you?
Yeah.
And was there ever a time when y'all used horses?
You had a horse?
We had a saddle horse, but we had, Dad had a tractor.
But you used horses more for pleasure, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, we did.
They weren't work horses.
No.
Okay.
Boy particularly had a horse in mind.
Okay.
And I never did care that much about horses. I guess because I had to ride with the working stock and everything, it wasn't that romantic to me
sure.
to get on a horse.
Yeah. Tell them how it was that you ended up going to college.
Well, Dad had promised me that he would let me take our combine and do some custom combine work after we got ours cut. And Dad would never work on Sunday. And so it rained.
Okay.
Well, we couldn't work on Monday or on Sunday, whenever. And so this girl I was going with was going to Howard Payne. So I thought, well, an opportunity to go see her. So I went on the pretense I was thinking about going to college. Well, I went down there and we went to the parade a little bit in town, and I went on back home. And going back home, I got thinking, when I get home, Dad's going to want to know what I decided. And I couldn't decide why I wouldn't go to college, so I did.
Well, but he had asthma. So sitting out on that combine for a whole week, I'm sure helped him make up his mind.
I bet.
Yeah.
So what were your parents like, or what was your relationship like with your parents growing up, and what were your parents' temperament? I mean, were they calm, quiet? Did y'all say, "I love you"? Did y'all pray together as a family?
I never doubted that I was loved. My mother and daddy's temperaments were totally different. She thoroughly loved my daddy, and I think he thoroughly loved her. But he loved to fish and hunt, and he liked to dance, and he liked to have a good time. And my mother was a private person. She was a Christian woman. And Daddy didn't become a Christian until later on in his life. Okay. So we never doubted that Daddy and Mother loved us. They had their quarrels, and that's the thing I didn't tell earlier when we lived in Zephyr. One memory that was most embedded in my mind was that Mother and Dad, we were in this drugstore. Mother wanted to go because the bus was supposed to come in with my sister out the country, and we should be there. And so he wasn't ready to go. So they scuffled and fought over the keys in the store, and I was sitting on the bar at the counter where you have soda pop stuff. And I remember I was afraid and I was humiliated. And then I remember getting in the car and going, because we did go home, and Mother's thumb was bleeding and her crying, and driving home and I was sitting in the back seat. That's one of my first memories, along with Zephyr. But most of the time we had a happy life. Daddy loved to go fishing, and he loved to hunt, and we'd go out on weekends. Every year we had a vacation, and they were very affectionate.
Like physically, like you would hug and okay.
Yeah. And my mother, I never remember getting up and going anywhere that there wasn't a Bible on the counter that my mother didn't read it. She was a stay-home mom. Mother was never really strong to work outside the home. So we always had a mother. And I wouldn't ever eat in the lunchroom. I'd walk home to eat lunch because I didn't like the smells and the noise of the lunchroom. It was too noisy, and the smell of hominy just made me want to throw up. And I didn't particularly like red beans, but yeah. And my sister gives me memories that you forget. Sometimes you dwell on the hard times and not so much the good times.
Okay.
But when we were in California, I have pictures of us at the park having fun with Mother and her brothers. I can remember when they went to the war. Her brothers went to the war, and I prayed every night for those brothers to come home. And they did. But that was like when I was, from the time I was in the first to the second grade, I guess.
Okay.
And so I remember us living in a haunted house in Shiro. The backyard would catch on fire, and people, it sounded like somebody walking down the hall. And I waked up one night, and it looked like a man standing at the foot of my bed with a gun. And he was, I'm sure it wasn't real, it was an apparition or whatever. And then the bathroom next to our bedroom, we had a large house, and there were 2 beds in our bedroom. And every morning we'd get up, the door that goes up in the attic would be open. We'd close it, and it would be open. So there were a lot of strange things that went on in that house, and people wouldn't ever live there very long. So Mother and Daddy had gone on to Talpa to find work, and another couple lived with us, friends of theirs, Dave and Lena Purefoy. And so Lena stayed there with Mother and us girls, and while we went to school. And someone in her family called her and said, Vaughn, I've been dreaming about you, and I want you to get out of that house as soon as you can. And so they packed up and they moved.
Wow.
But the pasture had caught on fire, and just so many different things happening. There was fear there.
Wow.
So.
What about you, Papa Joe?
Well, I was a great big kid before I knew that didn't everybody go to church on Sunday.
Okay.
Because we always did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was a great big kid before we had Wednesday night service, but Sunday morning and Sunday night, you know. And,
well, but your mother and daddy had a lot of people home
yeah,
after church.
somebody went home with us, or we went home with them every Sunday, you know.
Okay.
And,
what were your parents like? Were they affectionate towards you and Foy?
As far as knowing we loved, now they was no mushy,
sure,
like that.
Sure.
But we always knew we were loved.
Okay.
And
Joe takes more after his mother. She was feisty.
Okay.
What would you say? Kind of, I can't think of a word that I would use. But she'd say things that were cute. And I remember her telling of an instance when they were growing up. She didn't like to do dishes. So one time, she took all the dirty dishes and she put them in the cupboard and wrapped them in cup towels and things like that in the cupboard and didn't do the dishes. But she was very, I remember her telling about the time when they were younger. She taught school. And there were a bunch of women in the church, and they were making quilting and this sort of thing. She worked. So, I have better things to do than this. And she said, I'll never forget the look that those women gave me. Well, she made more quilts than anybody else when she got older. And she was very, very, I called her a long sufferer. She took care of all responsibilities and obligations. She was a not fast as far as, but she did everything in a hurry.
Sure.
Kind of like Joe. He was the same way. And she kind of had sarcastic humor.
Okay.
That she's, I had a hard time with her when we first married. I don't think she really wanted me for a daughter-in-law.
Okay.
But I learned to love her and respect her. And after Mr. Allcorn passed away, she moved next door, bought a house next door to us.
Okay.
And the boys would go over there and wait while I worked till we got home from work after school, the younger ones. And I really learned to love her, and I think she learned to love me. And I stayed in the hospital with her like 18 days, and then she came home, and then she had a stroke at home, and then I stayed over in the house with her for a week before she died. Okay. And Joe and Foy and us would take turns staying with her day and night. And I can remember sitting by her bed, for there was part of the time, if she had her stroke, she did not know anything. She wasn't conscious of anything. The doctor came to the house and would treat her. And at one point, like, I tried to give her a pill, and she squatted in the floor and wept. You know, it was not her, not the normal, because she wanted to do what she did to make things easier for you. And she was a caretaker. And Joe's kind of a caretaker. And so he inherited that from his mama. But anyway, I was sitting by her bed, and I was crying because then she was a little bit conscious, but she couldn't talk.
Okay.
And I said, and I blew my nose on the bottom of my gown. And I said, I used to get so aggravated at her because she did that. I'll let you blow her nose on her slip or whatever. And I laughed and made that comment. I used to I think that was gross, and here I am blowing my nose on my gown. And she patted me on the head. That's one of the last things she did before she died.
And so you think that was her, that was a endearing,
Yeah.
She acknowledged that she loved
And I know she'd come over and she said, now Shirley, Joe thinks you can do anything. This was when they were out at the farm. And she said, don't you ever get on that tractor. Don't ever do it because he'll have you using it. So, and then one day she came over next door and I was out mowing. I thought it'd be good exercise for me. She said, you get in the house. You have 4 boys and a husband to do that work. If something happens to you, who do you think is going to take care of those kids? And she was right.
So, okay.
Talk about your own memories.
Yes.
You know, some things stick in your mind. Talpa, the main intersections there, which you know where it is there, and West Bomer had a service station catty-corner across from the bank. And Dad bought products from him, gas and oil and everything. And I had gone to town with Daddy, and I was 4 or 5 years old. And Daddy and Wes Bomer, Wes was a big man. He was tall and heavy, had a drinking problem. Okay. But everybody loved Daddy Wes. Anyway, Daddy and Wes Bomer were standing out in the middle of the street. Now, can you imagine people standing out in the middle of the street? You don't do that anymore. Anyway, I need to go to the bathroom. And I kept telling Dad, you know, he put me off. I just turned around, proceeded.
Took care of business.
Daddy didn't think it's funny.
How old were you then? Do you remember?
Well, 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
Joe,
no better.
Joe's dad had a heart attack when you were 10.
Yeah.
And so, Joe's an A-type person anyway. He's assertive. He's one that takes charge and take over and do things. So, but he had to kind of take and help a lot on the farm, and I think that also accelerated the way he was, his personality.
At 10?
So at 10.
Okay.
And then he had more than one, didn't he? And he was supposed to take like 2 hours a day now.
Okay.
And so that's when I think he...
Well, the doctor finally told him, he said, you know, he had, I think, 3 heart attacks. And he said, probably the next one will get you. And he said, my advice to you is just get the house in order. And I guess he made a believer out of it.
Yeah, he'd take it to it. And so he had Parkinson's disease, and he kind of shuffle and shake a little bit. He was they said, he used to say, I have more energy. It took 2 teams of horses or mules or whatever he used to do work. He'd wear them out. And Joe had that same energy. And he told me one time, he said, Joe is just like I was. And said he has a lot of energy, and he'll have it for a long time if he'll take care of it. But he won't. He said, I didn't. And he said, he won't either. But if he would, he could have it for a long time.
Huh. What do you mean by that he won't?
Well, that you wouldn't quit.
Okay.
You just continually, Joe worked always. I mean, he was always working.
Okay.
And if he wasn't doing one thing, he was doing another. Okay. And he used to tell me, I know one day he came in and he said, I said, I'm just exhausted. And he said, I don't understand that word. I don't know what exhausted is. I don't even really know what it is to get tired. I don't get tired, I just quit. When he'd go out to the farm and he'd work after hours, after he'd worked at something else, he'd go out to the farm and he'd work till dark and come home and take a shower, and he felt great. And so he didn't understand that until when we moved to Miami. He had mononucleosis, and he was sick, and then he had an allergy reaction to penicillin, and he's never had the same energy since.
Right.
But he worked when he was in the bank. He worked day and night. He was trying to get everything. He just pushed it.
Is it because you enjoyed it? That you enjoyed work, or is
it? Yeah, and I had things I needed to do, and
sure.
Work to get it done.
I know Dr. Chandler told him one time. He said, Joe, you need to spend more time with your family. You need to quit working. This is when we were in Belgium. You need to quit working all the time. And Joe said, well, I need to pay go to work and make money to pay my bills. And Joe said, I knew he was right. But he liked it. He enjoyed it.
Sure.
And Dr. Chandler said, well, you might not have as many bills if you spent more time at home. So that was a doctor's advice, plus his daddy's advice, but he didn't take it. And but he was easier to get along with, easier to live with. After he had his mono, I didn't wish upon him, but he was a lot easier to live with because he wasn't so energetic and going and, so overpowering all the time. It was nice to have someone that could sit down and rest, be normal.
Sure.
Now don't do anything.
So, all right. So you got married. Did you do a honeymoon? Was there a honeymoon?
Yeah, we did.
Of sorts.
We went to the Western Hills in Fort Worth.
Okay.
Our first night, and that was the Cadillac of the motels in those days.
Fancy.
And then I think we spent one night there, and then we went down to Lake Whitney.
We were real smart.
Huh?
We were real smart.
Yeah. And
I'll tell you about that.
We some folks I worked with there at the funeral home in London Burton, Barbara, Ms. Erickson, had kinfolks that had a motel down on Lake Whitney. Well, there's somewhere to go, so that's where we went. And we spent 2 nights, I guess, there. Okay. One of the smart things we did, we got out on the lake there.
Without a life jacket.
No life jacket and living the boat. And high waves come up, But we did have sense enough to ride it to the shore.
Back to the shore.
And then once we got to the shore, or close to the shore, we went on back around to go where we
I guess you could swim, but I was not a good swimmer.
Huh?
I was not a good swimmer. I guess you could swim. And then we went to, he was best man and the guy that we double dated with, it wasn't that
Seminole. We went to Seminole.
Went to Seminole. Now, look at this. We got married in Tampa, drove all the way to Fort Worth, all the way to this other end. Then we drove all the way from there back to West Texas and Seminole, Texas, to be in a wedding. And then we drove all the way back to Tampa. Wow. So that wasn't good planning on our part.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So after you got married, where did you work at the time?
Well, I was working at the funeral home there in Brownwood.
Okay.
And I had a job there. I mean, they gave me a week off to get married. And so I worked there. We married in August, and then long in February, I quit because I had to go to Dallas to go to mortuary school. Seemed like it started the 1st of March. And of course,
we rented a little apartment in an apartment housing for like, what, $35 a month?
Okay.
Anyway, we couldn't, you couldn't find a job that would let you work. Well, I took a job at Red Ball Motor Freight down on the freight dock. And
what were we doing? What did that mean?
Go ahead.
Do what?
What was that job?
Red Ball, what we do, we take these, they had the bobtail trucks that go all over the city and pick up freight. And they bring it to the terminal and dump it there. And then our job was to load it from there into these six-wheelers. They'll go cross country.
Okay.
He lost 25 pounds in the
3 weeks, I lost 25 pounds.
Which he had it to lose.
Yeah, I was heavy.
Yeah. And I worked at credit banks for a credit company.
Not credit bank, so
Not credit bank.
Merchants Retail
Merchants Retail Credit. Children's Merchants Retail Credit.
Okay.
But back before that, we got pregnant. We were going to keep in Barronwood before we moved to Dallas. And we weren't going to tell anybody. It was going to be a secret until, you know, it became obvious. And I miscarried. And
well, you won what?
About 2 or 3 months.
2 or 3 months.
Okay.
November I miscarried.
Okay.
You know, everybody couldn't. Well, the guy who married us kept saying, well, his wife kept saying, you need to tell your family that you're pregnant. Well, we didn't want to. We wanted to surprise everybody. But we surprised everybody with the miscarriage. But then we moved on to Dallas. I don't know what we would have done to take care of the little thing because we didn't have any money. But that's the way life goes. Anyway, we lived in Dallas, what, a year, and you went to mortuary school.
9 months.
9 months of mortuary school. He worked for Macon Harkin Funeral Home. Where was the town we lived at? We lived at West Oak Cliff in apartments, and then we moved. He went to work for the Macon Harkin Funeral Home.
And lived in an apartment over the garage.
Okay.
And the bathroom, we could get 2 people in the bathroom as long as one of them was in the shower. I know it was that crowded, you know.
Hot, no air conditioning. And he could sleep, and I couldn't, so I'd wet a towel and lay over me. And
everybody didn't
when I
have air
married
conditioning
him,
back those days.
I inherited a fan. So I'd turn the fan on me, and so it'd cool me off.
Wow.
I could sleep through anything.
In the summer, too, when it was 100 degrees?
Summer. Yeah.
Man.
Hot summer.
Okay, so then...
Then we moved to Colton.
Okay.
And he worked 2 years for Stevens Funeral Home.
Okay.
He lived in the back of the funeral home there.
6 months for Mike Rack, and
That's true.
then he sold out to Stevens, and I went to work for them.
Then we bought our first little house.
Where, and that was in Coleman?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. And he...
Little 2-bedroom, 1 bath, carport.
Do you know if that house is still there?
Yeah,
it's still there. We drive by it every once. We haven't been back.
And I can remember, you know, we didn't have money, so his parents had a garden, so we had lots of squash. I couldn't eat squash for years because I got so tired of it. And I know one day he came in and he bought a load of dirt to put on the backyard. And I cried because that cost, no, it was $3. $3. And I said, we can't afford that. And then one time I made a cake, and he loves to tell this. I put coffee in it called for coffee, and I didn't think. And I put regular coffee instead of brewed coffee, and coffee grounds in it. And so I cooked it and cooked it and cooked it. And I thought, well, this is stupid. You poured coffee and it never dissolves. So it was one of those 7-minute fluffy icings, you know.
Okay.
So I took it and I poured it out in the very back of the yard. We had a good sized yard there in the grass, the tall grass. He came home that day and decided to mow. I tried to talk him out of it, nothing doing. He had to mow. So he mowed through that stuff, and of course he found it. I didn't know what it was. So my secret was out. Anyway, Richard was born there in Coleman.
Well,
I worked
we
for the
were
bank.
lived in the Wright's funeral home.
Yeah.
And when they sold out Stevens, they just left the building there, and we lived in the building, and we had a 3-room apartment. Had a bedroom and a living room and I guess two rooms, living room and bathroom.
Kitchen, living room.
And then we had bought this house, and I went on a trip, endless trip out of town. And I come in that day, Mom and Dad come to town, and they and Shirley had decided we needed to move, so they just...
Of course, my mother-in-law would not let me do anything. And so they basically moved
Well, Richard
us.
wasn't a week old.
He was, yeah, about a week old.
Wow.
So he had a new home when he got there. We lived there a couple of years, and then we moved to Bourbonnais, Texas. He was manager of the funeral home there. We lived up over the funeral home.
Okay.
And we had then about, 2 months or something like that before Mike was born.
Mm-hmm.
Mike was born in Wichita Falls.
Okay.
We, when we applied for the job down there, the story that everybody told that they would not talk to anybody under 40 years of age.
Okay.
Well, I was at that time 24 years old, I guess, and barely that. So when it's evident I wasn't 40 years old, you know. So they asked me how old I was. I said, well, I'll be 24 my next birthday, which was 11 months away.
So
So they let you do
I
it?
got the job, yeah.
he got the job.
Wow.
We lived over the funeral home for 5 years.
Okay.
And then Stephen came along, and he was born in Wichita Falls Hospital also.
Okay.
He was born, Mike was born in the Wichita General Hospital.
Okay.
And
They were not
Steve was
they were
born
good
in
caretakers at
Bethania.
General Hospital, so we changed to Bethania, the Catholic Hospital,
Okay.
and things went better.
Okay.
He was ordained as a deacon at the First Baptist Church
Okay.
there in Bourbonnais at that time. And then he decided that we needed to come back to Ballinger and help his mother and daddy on a farm, and so...
Well, we was wanting to do 2 things, that, and then we was wanting to get the kids out of the funeral home.
Right.
Okay.
Because they did that. A funeral home is no place for 3 boys.
No.
They put sand in the gasoline tank of the lawnmower. They put, what was it, water? Or?
Yeah, we bought a new Cadillac family car, and I had picked it up in Wichita Falls. I picked it up and drove in and parked at the back of the funeral home there. Well, I went inside and got sidetracked or something, and then everybody wanted to see the new car.
Mm-hmm.
So we all go back to see the car. Mike and Richard, one of them stand there at the water hose, and the other one had it stuck in the gas tank and putting water in the...
New Cadillac.
Why'd they do that?
Ambulance.
Huh?
Why did they do anything?
Yeah.
I don't know what they do.
Why did they do anything?
Anyway,
And they painted a car?
I called the service station across the street, told them what happened, and they come over and pulled it to the station, which was just across the street, and drained the gas tank out.
And there was a guy that worked at the funeral home and went outside, and one of the boys, was it Mike, was painting his car with a paintbrush. So they did a lot of things. That was not the place. And
Yeah.
one day, we had this guy, he was a younger guy, not married, didn't have kids, so he didn't know what to expect about that. He called upstairs, Joe, you need to come down here right now. What is, you need to come down here right now. Mike had pooped on the front door of the funeral home. So,
and on the front door or in the casket?
And no, on the front door.
Okay.
Front door.
Now, yeah, we found one in a casket one time, but upstairs we lived. The left door took us into our funeral where we lived, which was a big area. We had a long hall with 3 bedrooms and a bath, and a huge living room and place we had our TV and stuff, and then the kitchen. So anyway, and the right-hand door went into the casket room.
Okay.
So we had a black lady who'd come and help us, and she said, "Oh, I don't mind being up here, but I don't want anything to do with that casket room." One day the door was left open. She never did go back.
Really? She took off?
Yeah. And our washer and dryer was down in the preparation room.
Okay.
He wouldn't let us have it upstairs because sometimes they walk and they'll run things. So we had to wash our clothes up and down the stairs to wash our diapers. And you can imagine 2 in diapers, how much we do. Well, Richard was 13 months old when we moved there.
Go take a pocket full of quarters, go down to the Jiffy Mart, and there's a laundry there in the Jiffy Mart, and put the clothes in. If they dry, fine. If they're not, I'd have to go back again. And
but we had a washer and dryer.
we had a washer.
We had a dryer eventually.
Well, we didn't have a dryer then.
Because I know one time we had a girl come and she babysat with the kids, and we said, "Oh, we're out of diapers." But they're down in told her where the preparation room was, down in that room to the right. And they'll be in the dryer, and they should be dry, and you can just get them and bring them up. But we failed to tell her that it was a preparation room. And I think there was a body in there. I was scared her. But, you know, we were kind of naive, dumb, and immune to such things because we lived there all the time. I play the organ some there. I play the piano. Oh, and growing up, I played for the men's Bible class on Sunday morning. And Gene Evans would come and pick me up at my house and drive me down there. And Arnold Allcorn, your cousin, remembers that. I'd forgotten about it. And he said, "I can remember you coming and playing the piano for our Lions Club on a Sunday morning before Cisco Church." So,
I don't think it's Lions Club. I think it's men's Bible class.
Men's Bible class. I don't mean Lions Club.
So then you moved. Y'all wanted to go back to work on the farm.
And so we
moved to
put in a white auto store.
And what year was that?
64.
Okay. Pause.